All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our awesome Team Monday Zoom. I am so excited today because of our special guest. And I know a lot of you are feeling unbelievable on this product. Some of you have questions. And more than that, I'm just excited to be a part of this company right now. I cannot believe how many people are getting back to me telling me that that their health is changing, or that their wealth is changing, or that their numbers are up. It's just exciting. It's a very exciting time. Before I introduce our guest, Mr. Dr. Brian Dixon, I am going to just let you know, if you're on the fence, you know I'm going to keep knocking, because I know that there may only be a couple dozen rooms left for Cancun, if that. And I'm booked. I'm going to get my ticket actually right after this. I'm so excited. I know a lot of you are coming, so it's going to be such an experience. I have a girlfriend that's just at that Moon Palace right now on vacation with her family. And you know, there's a wave, kind of like a wave pool there. So it's going to be fun. She's on there ripping it up, and it's going to be so fun. I just can't wait. So if you are on the fence, just jump off the fence, come swim with us, come get educated and get tools to build your business. It's going to be incredible. Also, our Zooms are back this Friday. I'll be doing our normal opportunity meeting Zooms. And I'm really going to try and have like a sort of a PowerPoint share screen. I'm really gonna go big on this. I'm gonna try and make this even more professional than I already am. Can you guys believe that? I'm just joking. I'm learning as we go. Okay, this guy needs no introduction, Mr. Dr. Brian Dixon. I'm not even going to give him too much of an introduction, because you all already know how amazingly lucky we are to have him on board. But I want to say something else edifying him. You know, I didn't really get to know him well. You know, I rubbed shoulders with him a few times. But at this last convention, I was able to share, you know, a good 20, 30 minutes with him it was kind of like a little party at that place. I got to grab the guitar and sing a song. And he's just so down to earth. And he's so our people, especially this team. He is, you know, he eats organic. He wants to save the planet. He wants to have a garden. He's a guy from Oregon. I mean, it's a great, great person to have on our side. And that's why I really am grateful that he took the time to talk to us today about our new product, and also about his run with LifeVantage so far, where he's going, and also answer some of your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, Mr. Brian Dixon, and I'm going to go ahead and, can you unmute yourself?
I think so. Can you hear me okay?
There you are. Yes.
Wonderful.
So good to see you.
Oh, good to see you. And thank you so much for the invite. It's just an honor to be with you, and just this amazing group that's, I know, mostly in Hawaii, right? So I hope you don't mind, but I casual down a little bit, got my LifeVantage hoodie on, just trying to fit in. So a pleasure to be here.
Now, do you want me to just go ahead and ask you questions, or did you want to share some stuff first, or however you want to run this?
Yeah, no, it's up to you. I'm here to support you and everybody that's on the call. So whatever you think's the most beneficial, I'm happy to do whatever you like.
Ask you some questions, and so that we get them all answered. There's a lot of people that have some awesome questions. So
only easy questions, though, please.
Only easy questions. Well, they're not easy for us. That's why we're asking you, because you are the professional here.
No, and thank you so much for like the kind introduction and the kind words. Like, I grew up on the West Coast in Oregon, and I guess except for the beaches and the sunshine, yeah, we really are kind of kindred spirits for sure. And it's funny, you just say I'm a down-to-earth guy. I'm just a guy from a small town in Oregon who spent too much time in college. That's all it comes down to.
I love it. And we have the same mail. I see the mail thing in your back. I've got that same mail. Yep, I got the same one.
That's funny.
Yeah, no,
that's
good.
So funny. That's all my amazing wife. Yeah, she decorates everything around here.
Yeah, I love that. So good. So I'll just go ahead and ask you a couple questions. Why did you choose this company? Why LifeVantage? I mean, you could do anything with the degrees that you have and all of that. I'm just so curious as how that became your, you know, your choice.
Yeah, I don't know. Long story or short version. I don't know. But just growing up, I've had so many instrumental run-ins with nutrition. So anywhere from just athletics as a kid through college athletics, gardening growing up. I had some elderly Japanese neighbors who taught me how to garden, and just seeing every year how important nutrition or the soil is for the plants. I've talked about the health challenges that my dad's had. That's really nothing more than a self-inflicted wound from not taking care of himself through exercise and a healthy diet. And then just through my graduate studies, doing experiments and just, with my own hands, adding nutrients to my various experimental models, doing the experiments for myself, and then seeing the changes that nutrition can have. So I just constantly throughout my life, I've had this just continual reminders about how important nutrition is. And so I initially thought I was going down this academic route. After I graduated, I stayed on to postdoc, which is the next step to try to get a professorship at a university. And then a nutrition company was funding some of my postdoctoral work. They ended up recruiting me away from that life, but I refused, and I fought back against it for quite a while because I thought I was going to be an academic and live this dream life as a professor in the ivory tower. But then when I started thinking about all these experiences with nutrition and just kind of a secret love I had for business as well, it just, for me in my career, being able to utilize nutrition for like some business purpose, I don't know if those are the right words, but to be able to basically bring that knowledge closer to the human condition, because I think it's every scientist's dream that you ultimately want to positively affect the human condition. And so when you're a molecular biologist, I mean, I can't tell you the minutia that we're dealing with every single day. And I mean, we're pipetting, most people probably don't know what that is, but when we're using these fancy scientific tools to move fluids and solutions from one tube to another, and it's not until the last step that you finally see whether or not your experiment actually worked. And I was always just questioning as well during my graduate studies, was I really positively going to affect the human condition? So, I mean, I was working on some incredible minutia and just ever wondered if anybody would ever read the research and if it would have that direct effect. And if it did, it was going to be many, many years down the road. So the fact that now, we're developing products for humans to improve human health and the human condition, it's just a perfect fit for me. And so I ended up coming over to LifeVantage exactly because of the scientific story, especially NRF2, and studying the protein and those pathways was a major part of my graduate studies. And so I was always intrigued with LifeVantage, how they could tell a very complicated story very simply, and more importantly, put those into a bottle and get them into the hands of consumers. It just was mind-blowing. And through the most random set of circumstances, I ended up kind of just networking with different people, either people I'd worked with before or random dinners that were set up for me, and ended up meeting some key influencers there on the corporate side. And then a few months later, position opened up and my phone simultaneously blew up from a lot of different people there and said, would you be interested at looking closer at LifeVantage? And of course I jumped at the opportunity, and the rest is 3 months of history, I guess.
Yay. Thank you for that. We're so excited that you're on board. Our whole team and just the whole company, you're like the fit that was the puzzle piece that needed to make the whole thing, take us to the next level. That's what I firmly believe. And I love what you just touched on as far as the data and all of that, because you showed some incredible slides with the NAD and the pathway. And so I'm curious, where did that NAD pathway come from, and how many people were tested? How long? Give us some background on all those slides.
So the data itself?
Yes.
Yeah, so the data itself, when a molecular biologist especially wants to look at cell signaling pathways, the best model to look at cell signaling pathways, the molecular biology and the activation that happens are with cells in culture. So the data that I showed was from human cells in culture. So applying the individual products and then the combination or the tri-synergizer, and then just doing the molecular biology, looking at these genes that were expressed, and we've just found results better than we could have possibly had hoped.
That must have been so exciting for you to
well, it was. That. Well, this is what's crazy. That data literally came in. It came in. I was in Japan the previous week before Long Beach, The data came in to me in Japan on Saturday. So I spent most of my plane ride home analyzing the data. Finally got it all analyzed by that Monday or Tuesday before Long Beach. And we just rushed to get it into the presentation to share with you all. And in fact,
look at Rusty. He's so on it. See, he doesn't want to let you down with this.
Oh, that's funny. So you didn't even cut the bar. You let it go all the way off the screen. Yeah, that's great. So, you know, individually, the data is fantastic. It's more proof of what we already knew, that the individual products are working as advertised. But then when just looking at the synergistic effects that are there between when you add all three products into this cell line was just unbelievable. So you get additive and massive synergistic effects. It really was amazing. We couldn't have asked for better. And that's just a testament to you know, the other people in R&D and the other people that played a role in the product development process, that there really is that scientific basis to product development at LifeVantage.
So awesome. And so when I'm looking at this graph, I think I listened to a Zoom from Dr. Brett Brimhall, and he said that it's like going to the gym. And so a lot of people are having different things like tiredness, headaches, a lot of different things. And is it basically because we are opening up a pathway that's basically been blocked? I mean, can you explain a little bit about that to give us some clarity?
Yeah, that's probably part of it. And I love what Dr. Brett did and how he described everything. I really liked his words of an adaptive response. So let me take a step back. You're talking about freeing up the pathway. So these sirtuin proteins that we're ultimately trying to activate, their main role is really involved in cellular cleanup. So this process called autophagy. And you can think of it as just running a vacuum cleaner or a broom through the cell to pick up the stuff that the normal cleanup mechanisms of the cell can't quite get. But then what else can happen, especially as we get older, the damage gets more and more and more. And whether it's an organelle or a cell membrane or a protein or DNA, it just gets so damaged that it can't go through those normal kind of recycling or cleanup mechanisms. So the cell employs these really drastic measures of autophagy, where it upregulates what's known as an autosome, which really in itself holds a bunch of really harsh chemicals to try to undo the damage that's been done, so that they can unwind a protein, for example, and then break it back down into its amino acid building blocks or whatever organelle or structure it's trying to clean up. And you can think of these little autosomes as almost like little immune cells. So they will encounter this damage and they engulf it. Then they'll start to spew out their chemicals to try to undo the damage that has been done, at least to a point where the cell can put it back through these normal recycling mechanisms. So that's probably definitely one thing that's going on. Much less all of the health benefits that are associated with these sirtuin proteins. So they really are this kind of, I don't know the right word, but emergency responder of the cell. So they're going in and just cleaning up this messes and freeing up a lot of things that probably haven't been freed up in quite a while. But Brett's analogy of an adaptive response, and it really being analogous to exercise, right? If someone who's not a runner were just to go out and run 5 miles, they'd be pretty sore. But if you're a really trained athlete, you go and run 5 miles, that's no big deal, because their body is really used to it and is adapted to it. And we can list example after example, but it's just, if anyone changes their diet, right, all of a sudden they start eating a lot of fiber, boy, they're going to be pretty uncomfortable for a while until the microbiome starts to re-equilibrate to the new diet. And it's exactly analogous to traveler's diarrhea. I mean, you talked about Mexico. Mexico can get a bad rap that people going there, right, they'll get sick from drinking the water or eating the food. But it's really nothing more than a change in the diet and us getting used to the new things that we're exposed to and waiting for our microbiome to re-equilibrate. Because Mexicans, when they come to the US, they also experience traveler's diarrhea, or wherever we might go in the world. So that whole adaptive response is really the best way to look at it. So something has changed in our nutritional regimen, and it's just going to take a little bit of time. And it's my experience and the conversations I've had, it's not taking a lot of time for that adaptive response to settle down and for us to really kind of re-equilibrate to the new normal. And I guess to your point, you talked about dizziness and headaches. That's probably the thing I've heard the most. And I think that can just most simply be explained by a hydration situation. Most people, I mean, we know this from the scientific data, are simply just dehydrated. And one of the active ingredients in Protandim NAD Synergizer is similar to caffeine. Caffeine, we know, is a diuretic, and so it's also going to expunge more water from the cell. So if we're dehydrated or bordering on dehydrated early on, and then we put a light diuretic in there, then dehydration can kick in. When we're dehydrated, our blood vessels get smaller. It can increase our blood pressure, and that's probably where those headaches are coming from. So people that I've talked to with especially headaches, the problem has simply been fixed by making sure they stay hydrated. And we also want to make sure that we're getting everything out that we want to get out as well.
Yeah, I have a friend that actually does intravenous NAD, who found out when, you know, he couldn't believe that there was a product that you could actually take. Why did you choose these ingredients? Is there something special about, is there something extra special? And then also, is there a simple way to explain what all that you just said to people when they're asking, like, you have layman's terms? I mean, I don't really want to use the Mexican diarrhea, but
yeah,
you know, something.
I like the exercise adaptive response.
Right.
So really, anytime you're changing any one of your routines, you're going to feel it in your body. And that's exactly what's going on here.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too, I think, sorry to interrupt. I think it's also important to ask questions and try to meet people where they're at ahead of time. And if, for example, if somebody might be a little bit sensitive to caffeine, then maybe it's a good idea to start them a little bit slower and let them ramp up. But at the end of the day, we really need to be very introspective and kind of take note of what's going on and what's making us feel well and empowered and what's not. And the things that aren't, let's cut those out. So junk food and soda pop, like all that garbage, right? Food should make us feel energized and invigorated. If you feel like you need to take a nap after a meal, it's probably not what you should be eating. So really listen to your body and see where you're at and meet your body where it's at. But the flip side of that is we also know people who can drink a double espresso right before they go to bed and they sleep just perfectly fine. So it's really also a very individual circumstance.
That's so awesome. Thank you. Now I'm wondering, I'm getting a lot of questions. Is there a place eventually that we can see the studies and findings rather than just those graphs that you showed? Is LifeVantage, going to make that something where we can kind of review the data, or are there studies coming out? I know there's a ton of studies on NAD and that pathway, but are there going to be certain studies that, we have the peer-reviewed research with the Protandim. Is there anything in the works you know of?
In terms of, I'm sorry, publishing the data or
publishing
future studies?
And also just that we can see future studies. Is there stuff that we can see?
Yeah, so there is a ton going on right now, especially on the scientific front. So the data that we showed was some of the first data that we got back from these cell culture studies. And we were so excited about it. We thought you all would be as equally excited about it. So we didn't want to hold back, and we wanted to share it right away. So those studies are still in progress. And of course, the goal is to get those written up and submitted and published in a scientific peer-reviewed journal. And on top of that, we had to have a lot of conversations with the attorneys before we could show the data, because we were also worried that it could compromise any sort of patentability of the product. So normally when you file for a patent, and especially international patents, the data has to be completely novel, they call it. So it has to be brand new. No one should have been able to have access to it previously. So they want the most new cutting edge work. So because it was a partial data set coming out of a larger study, the attorneys were okay in us publishing that data. But I'm happy to say too, we met with patent attorneys on Friday, and we're going to be filing at least 2 patents. And that's going to start, well, it's already started, but we have some meetings set up this week to really get to the nitty gritty. So probably the first place you'll see a lot of that data will be actually in the patents and in the patent submissions. But then as we finish up the study, we'll button that up, get it published. And then we do have at least 2 other studies that are in the works. One, we just got back today. We got approval to go ahead with the study. So that will be done in humans. We won't be looking at a lot of molecular biology in that in that study, but it's more just kind of how are people feeling. So there's some validated surveys and questionnaires that are out there. So we're kind of combining two different validated surveys just to see where people are at, and get some just overall sense of well-being, I guess would be the right way to put it. And then starting probably the middle to the end of next year, we're going to do a molecular biology in human patients as well.
Awesome.
So a lot's going on.
Exciting. So exciting. Okay, now if you were going to explain what NAD does by itself and then with the 3 products together, what would you tell your son to tell his teacher? Because we really want to simplify it for this team, or for me. Is there a certain thing, the sirtuins? Is there, the mitochondria? I love, I can say how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and therefore we want that strong. Is there something that you you can say, or you would tell your child how they would read it?
It does get a little bit hard for me. I might have to think about it for just a second.
Think about it, and you can text me that later, and I'll shout it out to the team.
Yeah, but it's just really, NAD is this essential molecule for life, and we know that it declines with age, and we know the activity of these sirtuin proteins also declines with age. Probably a major cause, not probably, it is a major cause of the aging process. So we were just looking at ways that we could remedy those situations. So to increase the sirtuin activity, we needed to increase the amount of NAD that's floating around the cell. And then you get all of those benefits that flow down from there.
I'll tell you, I just flew from Hawaii to California, back to Hawaii, and then to New York City, and then back to Hawaii in a week, and I have no jet lag, which is unbelievable. I mean, that's literally unbelievable. So that's one great thing. Okay,
I had a very similar experience with my last trip to Japan.
Isn't it amazing? I mean, I'm usually wrecked. I come home from an event or from, especially a weekend like that, and my husband just knows it's going to take me 2 or 3 days. I'm going to be grouchy. I'm going to be, less patient with the kids. And I just, I was up at 5 a.m. and no nap, and it's incredible. So the absorption rate, what does the absorption rate have in our system? And is it, what I'm trying to wonder too, is it because it's activating, is it not needed to have a certain absorption rate? Does that make sense?
And so it's hard. We don't know the exact absorption rate on Protandim NAD Synergizer itself, but we do know the absorption rates of all of the individual ingredients. Those have all been well documented in the scientific literature. And you'll be surprised to hear that the absorption rates are actually pretty low. Yeah. But that's also very normal. But because we're activating through these different cell signaling pathways, it only takes a small number of molecules to elicit a very large effect. So we know that we're delivering compounds that are going to be activating these different pathways.
Wow, that's so powerful. Okay, here's a question. So we have a lot of CBD people that are in our circles, and CBD versus activation. I guess I'll ask you that first. Why is activation so much more powerful, or is it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so to compare the Protandim family of products to CBD, it really is an apples to oranges comparison. Right, a lot of people are taking CBD for things like anxiety or maybe pain management, for a lot of different reasons. And we're trying to work on, especially these different theories of aging. So it really is a hard comparison. The people that have great benefits from taking CBD, gosh, I encourage them to keep doing that. But we really are talking about two completely different things.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's the same with vitamins. It's not even, vitamins and nutrigenomics are so different.
Yeah, it's so different. Just completely different mechanisms in our bodies, and yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so what about what are your goals in the next few years while you're here at LifeVantage? And then I know your time is, we have a few more minutes, so I just want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time.
Oh, no, I appreciate it. I'm happy to spend as much time as you need, but thank you. What are my goals? Man, I've got lofty goals. I want to continue to deliver these amazing science-based products, and that's, my promise to you all. I want to support you and everyone in their businesses, however best possible, especially on that scientific front. I'm an incredibly, I lost the word, competitive guy as well. So, man, I want to grow LifeVantage to the biggest company possible. And if not the largest nutritional player in the space. Just like you said off the bat of this call, it really is a very exciting time at LifeVantage. You know, it's a momentum business. We've got momentum on our side right now. We've got just the most amazing leadership there at the corporate office. I love the culture of everybody I've met out in the field with LifeVantage, and especially your team, Daisy, and everybody else on the call. It's just, the people are so amazing, and it really is different. I know it's easy to say, and it's hard to put into words, but there's just a different feel or a different vibe with people there. So the recipe just couldn't be more perfect for an explosion in the next couple of years. And I'm just going to do everything I can to contribute, do my part to make that happen.
Wow, we really, really appreciate you being on board. And I know that I'm talking with Darren actually this week. He doesn't know, don't tell him yet, but I'm going to drop the bomb on being more sustainable as a company and how we can work as a team to grow that way, which is awesome. I know you and I talked about a sourcing video so that we could, you know, just get people more comfortable with the ingredients and where they're sourced from. They're not organic, but I know that we do heavy metal testing, a bunch of different testing on it before they come, and they're double pressed. Is it the same with the NAD as far as the testing goes?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything goes through the same quality control process. Right? There's just no exceptions. And you're right. So we're testing for all those contaminants, like you said, heavy metals, but also herbicides and pesticides, different residues from different things. So the products are incredibly clean, and I've been at literally every step of the way just pleasantly surprised by all of the steps that are in place to ensure that quality. And I can say a lot more due diligence is done at LifeVantage than even companies that do self-manufacture.
Yeah, and even the organic companies. I mean, they're not testing for herbicides and pesticides and all of those things. And then,
but it's a little. Can I say one more thing? And
yes.
I have a background in agriculture, and it is a myth about. Well, it's not a myth. What I want to say is there's a lot of confusion around pesticide-free and organic. And organic isn't synonymous necessarily with pesticide-free, right? So, for example, in my garden, I don't spray a thing. I think in 30 years of gardening, I've once or twice sprayed a little bit of biodegradable soap on there to try to knock down some aphids. But I just try to do everything I can to keep all chemicals off of there. But even in commercial organic agriculture, there are still pesticides used. And what's also really scary and a little bit of an unknown around organic agriculture is a lot of certified organic pesticides are still incredibly toxic. They're just derived from the earth. And so it would be nice to get drill down a little bit more on that issue for sure. But just the fact that we have that testing on the raw ingredients and on the finished products as well, just knowing that nothing is there, no matter how it was grown, whether it was organically or conventionally, is still some amazing peace of mind.
Yes. Awesome. Here's a question, Dr. Brian. I have heard of synthetic NADs developing. How would you teach or educate someone believing in the FDA rather than making your own NAD? Does that make sense?
Synthetic NAD.
That's what.
Yeah, and I want to look into this issue more, but I have a hard time believing that NAD itself is actually making it into the cell. And so the analogy would be a lot like glutathione, if you're familiar. And if you're not familiar with glutathione, it's probably the most important molecule in our bodies that no one knows about. I mean, it's the molecule other than water that's the most predominant molecule in our bodies, and it's involved in antioxidant defense. It's involved in the detoxification process, and it really sets the biochemistry of the whole cell. But you can't take glutathione orally and really affect your internal glutathione levels. There's just too many checks and balances and digestive processes and transport issues where it just doesn't make it into the cell. And just knowing what I know about NAD on a biochemical level, being a highly charged molecule and all of these different molecular properties of NAD, I have a hard time believing that it's going to get in. And if it does get in, to get in at effective enough dosages it's really going to affect the ultimate NAD status of the cell. And it's just that same philosophy that LifeVantage has had, right? Kind of make your own. You know, the analogy I like is one of a machine. If I had any machine, whether it's a car or a sewing machine, they can only go so fast, right? A car can only drive so fast. A sewing machine can only stitch so fast. But if I have 2 sewing machines, I can stitch twice as much clothes. If I have 4, I've doubled it again. So we're really trying to increase the machinery around NAD so that we can make our own, instead of just giving it directly or even indirectly through what they call the substrates, or the way to make it from scratch.
Wow, that's powerful. What about, is there anyone that should not take NAD? I know that with radiation treatments, there's, you know, a little bit of different explanation on if someone should take the NRF2 and the NRF1. Do you know anyone? I think you mentioned heart issues.
Yeah, so I would still yield that same advice, even with NAD as well. And especially because we know that we are affecting those NRF2 genes as well. So at that point, during active treatment, I would definitely err on the side of caution, work with the physician. But most oncologists will agree that, you know, as long as they're not being treated by other medications, to take supplements before and then especially after, to try to nurse the body back to health is a great strategy. The thing that's so hard, and it's really disheartening to say, but during any sort of cancer treatment, they're really they're poisoning us, right? Whether it's radiation, whether it's the chemicals that they're giving, they're taking us to the brink of poison, and they're leveraging the aspect that cancer cells are more susceptible to these toxins than our normal host cells. So the last thing we want to do is change how any of those things are being metabolized inside of our body, to maybe increase the risk of a bad event happening, or I think is equally as bad, making those medications not as effective as they could be. So that's my advice during active treatment, for sure. Awesome. And then the one group that you kind of alluded to that I would be a little bit cautious with, and this is something we can get at just with questions right up front, but yeah, looking around heart issues or issues around cardiovascular health. We know that one of the ingredients, teacrine, in Protandim NAD synergizer is binding to the same receptors that caffeine is. So it can be a vasoconstrictor. So it does have the risk of increasing blood pressure. So any sort of additional stress on an already stressed heart, or increasing blood pressure in somebody that's already a little bit higher. But that's really the only one group I could think of erring on really some cautionary sides.
Okay, awesome. Now here's a question I don't understand, then you might, hopefully. If you don't, that's fine. What information do you have about Protandim and or NRF1 or NRF2 pathways and NAD with regards to MPN genetic mutations, which are abnormal growth of white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets? Is there any data specifically with regards to the JAK12 mutation? You can tell that's from someone that is much more educated than me. And you can always want to look it up and get back to us. I'm totally appreciative of that too. That was just kind of a question that just came out of the blue.
Yeah, I will have to look into it. I've never heard of MPM, if I heard you right. I have heard of the JAK pathway, but I'm not familiar of what SNPs or small genetic mutations are in those pathways and how that may play a factor. Knowing what I know about the JAK pathway, it's removed from the NAD biosynthetic pathway and the sirtuin pathway that we're talking about. So off the top of my head, I can't think of a direct link, but I'll definitely look into it a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, we've gone over, and I so appreciate you, and I'm so excited for your goals and where we're going and all of that. It's going to be big this next, year, 2 years. I really feel like it's setting a precedent, and I love your explanation of anyone that's having any kind of, I wouldn't call it a side effect, but a reaction, to just stick with it. For me, I can't do 2. I have to only do 1. And then when I was in New York, I did 1 in the morning after breakfast or with breakfast, and then I did another one around noon. and it was fine. But if I take 2, I'm like, whoa, but I'm really sensitive, you know? So thank you for explaining to, you know, check ourselves inside, what's working, what's not. And we just are so appreciative that you're on our team and so excited. And yeah, we really, really appreciate you taking the time today.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And I have to echo your initial sentiments. It was really such a pleasure to sit with you and get to chat and like learn where your heart's at, and also meet your amazing husband as well. Just such a pleasure. And then so many members of your team as well. It's just, you know, it's just the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, and it's just very clear with everybody. So thank you everybody for being so welcoming to me. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Have a wonderful evening, everybody.